Hey everybody, it's Heather Nichols. I have a fun project to share with you today that uses the striped stencils, but instead of using ink and blender brushes to apply the stripes, I'm going to use liquid watercolor. I've got all three sizes of striped stencils, the 1 inch, the 3/4 inch, and the 1/2 inch, and I'm using just the largest size stencil from each of the collections. To attach the stencils to my projects, I'll use Pixie spray. I'm using a flat watercolor brush along with the liquid watercolors Guava, Lime Zest, Pineapple, and Cookie Monster. I'm going to be using more pastel tones, and so I have the glass water dropper bottle to add water to the color to dilute them to make those lighter tones. I'll be using the Quick Critters Spring stamp set and die combo. I'll use the dies to create the bodies for the animals on my cards and the stamps for the sentiments and the details. I'll use the stitched rectangle stacklet dies to cut out my backgrounds for my cards, and I'll also add a little sparkle with the bits and pieces white rhinestones. Finally, I'll be using the mini wobble springs to add an interactive element to my project. I have 3 different background designs to show you using liquid watercolor. The first one is a stripe design using the 1/2 inch stripe stencil. I'll attach the stencil to the piece of watercolor cardstock using Pixie spray. I'm using Guava liquid watercolor for this first stripe, and I'm adding that to my palette along with drops of water to dilute it down to get a lighter tone. I'll use my paintbrush to pick up the paint and then paint it into the openings on the stripe stencil. Next, I'm going to do a gingham look, and I'm using the 3/4 inch stripe stencil. I'm attaching that to my project with Pixie spray. I'll do exactly what I did with the previous stripe. I'm going to use Lime Zest liquid watercolor. I'll dilute that down with some water, and then I'll use my brush to paint the color into the openings onto the stencil. Once my stripes are complete in the horizontal direction, I'll remove the stencil and turn it 90 degrees and place it back down onto my cardstock so that I can paint stripes in the vertical direction. Finally, I'm going to do a plaid using different colors of the liquid watercolor and the 1 inch stripe stencil. I'm attaching the stencil down with Pixie spray again, and then I'm going to paint stripes using Guava, Pineapple, and Cookie Monster liquid watercolor. Once I have the horizontal stripes painted, I'm going to use a heat tool just to speed up the drying a little bit. This one got a little bit wet for me, and then I'll rotate the stencil 90 degrees and paint the vertical stripes in Guava, Pineapple, and Cookie Monster liquid watercolor. I used a stitched rectangle Stacklets die to cut 2 panels from each of the backgrounds that I created with the stripe stencil and liquid watercolors. I used the Quick Critters Spring stamp and die combo set to create these cute bunnies, ducks, and sheep. I'm not going to show you how to do that on this video, but they're really easy to put together and really cute for your projects. I'm stamping the sentiments for my cards on the bottom of the panels using Oreo ink. For the sheep, I'm going to use the Missing You stamp, and so I'll set that up in my MISTI, close the lid of my MISTI to pick up the stamp, ink it up, and then stamp it onto my project by closing the lid of the MISTI again. I have 2 panels for each of the animals, so I'll be able to do 2 of each, and I'll have 6 cards complete at the end to send out to my friends and family. The sentiment that I want to use for the bunny panels, "There's Nobunny Like You," is too long, and so I actually will take my scissors and cut the stamp, and then I can set that stamp up on 2 lines. If you don't want to cut your stamp, you can use selective inking to just ink up part of the sentiment. I think it's going to be easy enough to put back together into 1 line when I need it to, and so for me, cutting it is not a big deal. So first I'm stamping the "There's No Bunny" line, and after I get that stamped, I'll add the "Like You" right underneath, and then I will stamp that on each of the panels for the bunny cards. The last sentiment for the duck card is "What'll I Do Without You," and I'm stamping that at the bottom of the multicolored plaid panels. Instead of the standard A2 size card, I'm going to do an A1 size card, and that measures 3.5 inches wide by 4 7/8 inches tall. You can mail A1 size cards with regular standard postage. Always check with your post office if you've got something that's a little bit thick or odd sized, but A1 sizes should mail just fine. I'm attaching each of the watercolor striped panels to the Toffee card bases that I have cut into an A1 size. To attach the critters to each of the cards, I'm using the mini wobble springs. These just make things just a little bit more fun and interactive. There's two sizes on the wobble spring, a flat side and then kind of an open side, and I attach the flat side to the back of whatever I'm attaching to the card front. In this case, it would be the bunny or the sheep or the duck. So put the flat side onto the back of what you're going to attach and then peel off the paper backing to attach it to the card front. My final finishing touch on this project is a little bit of sparkle by adding some bits and pieces white rhinestones around each of the critters on the cards. I'm doing 3 rhinestones on each card, and I'll attach the rhinestones using the multimedia mat. I hope you learned something new today and are inspired to try out the stripe stencils to add some watercolor stripes to one of your next projects. You can find all of the supplies for the projects I created today in the Taylored Expressions web store at tayloredexpressions.com. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody, and I'll see you next time.